The Secrets We Keep podcast, the bigger decision to leave and return to Texas. I want to welcome you to the Secrets We Keep podcast. I'm Gina Hunt, author, advocate, and nurse. But as you know, before we get started, I want to say that this podcast is for educational, informational, and inspirational purposes only. I am not a licensed therapist, a counselor, or attorney, and nothing shared here should be considered therapy, legal advice, or professional counseling. Although I am a nurse in my professional life, I am not acting in that role on this podcast, and nothing shared here should be taken as medical, mental health, legal, or professional advice. This podcast is based on personal experience, reflection, opinion, and conversation. It is a space for honest discussion about trauma, abuse, healing, self worth, survival, and recovery. These conversations are not limited to women only. Men, women, and people from all backgrounds can be affected by these experiences. Please use your own judgment and seek appropriate professional support for your specific situation. If, however, you are in immediate danger or experiencing an emergency, please call 911 or reach out to a crisis resource in your area. Listener discretion is advised, as some episodes may include some sensitive topics. Today, I want to talk about the bigger decision to leave and return to Texas. You know, sometimes people think that the hardest part is simply deciding to leave, but I don't know, in a lot of situations, leaving is only the beginning. The bigger decision can be deciding where you go next, what you leave behind, and what you are willing to start over from, and whether you can trust yourself enough to believe that peace is still possible. Leaving is not just one decision, it's a series of decisions. It is a decision that has to be thought through because a person has to ask, am I going to be safe if I leave? Where am I going? Because some people just don't know where they're going to go. Do I have enough money? Some people don't have enough money, and some people don't have any money. Can I safely leave and take my child with me? And some people have more than one child. What will happen if I try to leave and get caught before I'm ready? And now that's a real fear. So that's a question that people need to really think about and think through. So many times people act like someone just wakes up one morning and decides they're going to leave. And that is usually not how it happens. For many people, leaving has been on their mind for a long time. They've been thinking and planning and worrying and waiting and just trying to figure out how to make the safest decision they can. Leaving is not only emotional, it's logistical. It is not just about being tired, hurt, or just downright fed up. It's also about whether you have transportation, whether you have somewhere to stay, if you have access to your money, if you have your important papers, and whether you can leave without putting yourself or your child or children in greater danger. Now, I believe that that is why people should stop acting like leaving is simple. For a lot of people, it is not simple at all. It takes thought, it takes planning, it takes timing, and sometimes it takes more than one attempt. It has not, or I should say, it was not an easy decision for me to decide to leave. I had seen my mother's marriage fail, and I didn't want to fail. I hated failing. I have always hated failing, even in competition with myself. As an adolescent and then as a young adult, I saw that the marriages of the women in my family, they just didn't last. And I didn't want to become another statistic of divorce. So I stayed married and I tried. I tried to make it work. But sometimes, trying doesn't work out. And then you finally realize when enough is just downright enough. You have to know when to stop calling it perseverance when it's really pain. You have to know your worth. And for me, I also had to protect my child. I didn't want my young daughter growing up believing that what she saw her mother accept was what she would one day expect from a husband if and when she got married. So I had to be strategic. I had to plan. I had to think about how I was going to leave, when I was going to leave, where I was going to go. There were phone calls that had to be made, airplane tickets that had to be purchased in a way that would not show up on credit cards. He being my ex-husband, could see. It was a lot. It was a whole lot. I had already sent my daughter away under the guise that she was going for the summer. I think I had shared that in an earlier podcast. But because she could not stay in the toxic environment, she had to go. And that was hard for me to be separated from my daughter, even though in my heart I knew it was for the best. But I also know everybody does not have that option. Everybody doesn't have someone they trust to help with their child or their children. Everybody does not have the money, the support, or the resources to make that kind of move. So, what happens when somebody knows it's time to leave, but it's just not safe yet? That is part of the bigger decision, too. That is the part people do not always understand. They look from the outside and say, if it's that bad, why not just leave? But leaving safely and leaving quickly are not always the same thing. Sometimes a person stays longer than they want to because they're trying to survive long enough to make a safe exit. They're trying to gather money, important papers, transportation, support, or simply the right moment. So sometimes staying is not surrender, and sometimes staying a little longer is strategy. I don't know if people ever thought about it that way. They just be like, well, she might love it. She's still there, you know? So I want people to really think about this. Listen. And the other thing I want to say is this: even when you know leaving is the right decision, it can still hurt. You can still cry, you can still grieve, you can still be angry with yourself for how long it took, or you can be sad about what you were losing, especially if it was something you had built, something you cared about, or something you had done well. But that does not mean you made the wrong decision. Sometimes you have to remind yourself, we're going to be okay. That is all I want somebody to know today. We are going to be okay. And sometimes you have to speak back to fear and say, no, God has me. I may have shed a couple of tears because I do not like to lose something I worked hard for. I do not like to walk away from something I invested in. But I also believe with my whole heart that God can give better. God can restore. God can provide more, abundance, overflowing. And when you believe that, it helps you make the bigger decision. Because the bigger decision is not just leaving a person or a place. Sometimes it is deciding that your peace matters more than what looked good on the outside. Sometimes it is deciding that safety matters more than pride. Sometimes it is deciding that starting over is better than staying stuck. And sometimes returning home is not defeat. Sometimes returning home is the very thing that saves you. Returning to Texas should have felt like coming home. It should have felt happy, should have felt familiar. But internally, I still felt like a failure. I was relieved to be back in Texas, but I grieved that I could not make my marriage work. I was embarrassed that it did not last, especially because people had told me it would not. And this was not even the first time I had left. I thought I would feel peace, but at that time I still felt fear. I feared what he would do. I feared he might come looking for me. I feared what he was capable of. I felt uncertain because I still did not have a job and I had a child to care for. Even though I had a roof over my head because I was living with my mother, I still knew I had to pull my weight. I felt overwhelmed because I felt everything all at once. I also learned that I should have listened to God. He was warning me. Prior to my marriage, right before my marriage, my engagement, everything, red flags just waving, flying. They were everywhere. My spirit knew something was not right. He was telling me not to get married, and I did it anyway. So I felt like I had let God down. I felt like I had let my mother down and my child. And I let myself down too. So I was embarrassed about that. I was ashamed. I was sad because I thought I was becoming another statistic. But if I had to look at it differently, I would have realized I was avoiding a far worse statistic. Instead of being embarrassed about divorce, I could have understood that might not have made it out alive. I might not have from the volatile marriage I was in. So instead of being another divorce statistic, I could have been another murder statistic. I wanted peace. I just did not know what peace looked like. I didn't know how to pray the way people said prayer was supposed to look. I knew I talked to God. I talked to God all day, every day, like he was my best friend. But I didn't yet understand that this too was a relationship with God. People would say I needed to be in church, but you know what? Sometimes the same people shouting inside the church were the same ones showing no kindness in the parking lot. So I had a lot to learn, not only about healing, but about faith, about God, and about what relationship with Him really meant. So when I first arrived back in Texas and literally got out the car and kissed the ground, yes, I kissed the ground. I was elated that I had made it, that I had made it away from such a destructive person and such a destructive marriage. But then came all the thoughts, all the fears, all of the denial, all of the emotions. I cried tears because I was back home. I cried tears because I didn't die. I cried tears because I was going to see my daughter. I cried tears because of shame, too. And I had to pull really hard on my faith, and that helped me become determined to make it. So, what I did next, I don't remember exactly how long it took, but it was not too long, was this. I enjoyed that day. I took a nice shower over at my sister's mother in law's house with my mom. I ate homemade enchiladas, and they were delicious. We drank tea, we laughed, we joked, and we played board games. And for a little while, just a little while, I just wanted to erase the time that I had been away. Then, when we got ready to leave and go to my mother's house, I made a decision. I decided that if I kept all of that negative emotion tied up inside of me, it would paralyze me. And I was determined that on Monday, I was going to go look for a job and I was going to have a job within a week. And I was blessed to get one that I enjoyed, one that I kept until I needed to take care of my mother and her health. So, for the first time in years, I had hope of a better day, a better week, a better month, a better year, a better life. I had hope. I had no reason to believe that I could not provide for my family. I had no reason to believe that I would not have a happy ever after, even if that happily ever after was just me and my daughter. Because what I wanted again was peace. I wanted peace of mind. I wanted my house to be peaceful. I wanted my mind, my body, and my soul to be at peace. And at that particular time, hope told me that I could still have all of that. Yep, what I learned though, after making that move back to Texas, was that I had a lot to learn. But I also learned that I could make it. I learned that giving up on yourself is where the real danger begins. But if you stay strong in your faith, if you hold on to what God has already brought you through, then you begin to understand that you are still here for a reason. And God had already brought me through a lot of things in that marriage that I should not have survived. Hell, God had already brought me through a lot of things in life since I was a child that I should not have survived. I didn't know how, I didn't know when, but I knew I was going to find a job. I knew I was going to take care of myself and my child. I knew somehow everything was going to be okay. And like I said, I had said I was going to have a job I was going to go look for a job on Monday and I would have a job within that week, which I did. But I'm just letting you know that at that time, saying it and believing it and knowing it are two different things. So I had to believe, I had to hope that I really was going to go look for a job and be blessed to get one by the end of the week. So even though in the back of my mind, I still had fear of my husband showing up, I still fear of him coming back for me because I hated to lose and he truly hated to lose. I still knew I had made the bigger decision and I knew that decision was necessary. Now, don't get me wrong. I didn't just leave him because I hated to lose. I don't want that to be read into that. I left because he was violent. He was abusive mentally and physically. And he had a problem. It wasn't a diagnosed mental problem, but his jealousy and the way he acted, he had a problem. You would have to read the book to get a little bit more out of that. But he definitely had a problem. And I definitely needed to leave so I could live. So when I saw that bigger decision to leave and return to Texas, I mean, that leaving was not just about getting away. It was about choosing life. It was about choosing peace. It was about choosing a future that I could not yet see, but still believe God had it for me. And if you're in that place today, I want you to know this. Sometimes the bigger decision is the one that saves your life. Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to the Secrets We Keep podcast. Protect your peace, speak your truth, and continue to heal. God bless.